But George was George. You know, he just had this phenomenal gift. You don't get players like George Best very often.
Every defender has one memory they wish they could erase. Not a final, not a trophy, not even a defeat. A player. The one who made them question everything they had trained for. Some footballers beat defenders. These ones broke them. Not with violence, not with anger, but with moments. No defender could predict. One touch, and the tackle was gone. One turn, and the stadium exploded. One mistake, and the match was over. The greatest fear in football was never getting kicked. It was becoming the next defender. Everyone remembered for the wrong reason, because every generation produced a different nightmare. One played with fearless swagger. One created complete chaos. One ruled the penalty area. One punished every mistake. One defeated defenders with pure intelligence. And one humiliated the very best in the world. These are the 7 football legends, who defenders never wanted to face. Subscribe, because football's most feared legends should never be forgotten. There was one thing defenders hated more than pace, more than strength, more than power, the unknown. Because you cannot stop what you cannot predict. That was the gift of Frank Worthington. Former manager Jimmy Greaves never found a better description. The working man's George Best. It was more than praise. It was an admission. Worthington could turn an ordinary attack into complete confusion. One movement became 2. One touch became 3. One defender became none. By the time a tackle arrived, Frank Worthington had already imagined something else. That was why coaches struggled to prepare for him, and why defenders stopped trusting their own instincts. During the 1978-79 First Division season, he became the league's top scorer with 24 goals, finishing ahead of Kenny Dalglish and Frank Stapleton. Then came the goal against Ipswich Town, a moment supporters still replay. Not because it was lucky, because it captured everything Frank Worthington was: creative, fearless, impossible to read. And for defenders, that uncertainty was always the beginning of fear. Some footballers waited for defenders to make mistakes. Charlie George made the first move. He played with complete belief. Former Arsenal captain Frank McClintock remembered that confidence, while coach Don Howe believed Charlie was years ahead of his time, pressure never slowed him. It brought out his best. Then came the 1971 FA Cup final. Extra time, one strike, one winner. Charlie George completed Arsenal's historic league and FA Cup double. Then came the image. Football never forgot. He lay across the Wembley turf, arms stretched wide, not celebrating wildly, simply owning the moment. That photograph became one of English football's greatest memories, because it captured Charlie George perfectly. Fearless, confident, unapologetic. Defenders could prepare for his football. They could never prepare for his belief. Every defender wanted control. Stan Bowles took it away. He was never interested in playing safe. Former manager Dave Sexton built one of the finest sides in Queen's Park Rangers history around Bowles, because nobody else could create danger quite like him. He dribbled when others passed. He passed when others shot. He made impossible decisions, look completely natural. That was the problem. Defenders could study patterns. Stan Bowles rarely gave them one. During the 1975-76 First Division season, he inspired QPR's remarkable title challenge, finishing just 1 point behind champions Liverpool later, when Bowles joined Nottingham Forest. Manager Brian Clough famously wanted him to keep things simple. Get the ball, find John Robertson. But Stan Bowles had never been a simple footballer. He played by instinct, not instruction. That was why defenders feared him. You cannot predict chaos. You can only hope it stays away from your side of the pitch. The penalty box was not gentle. Centre halves were brutal. Challenges came late. Elbows came high. And fear was part of the job. But Denis Law walked into that danger like it belonged to him. He was not the biggest striker, but he was brave, sharp, and ruthless. Sir Matt Busby said, "No other player scores as many miracle goals as Denis." That was the truth. Headers, volleys, flicks, overhead kicks. Law found goals where defenders saw danger. He was part of Manchester United's famous Trinity, with George Best and Bobby Charlton. But inside the box, he had his own kingdom. Defenders could mark him, push him, crowd him, kick him. Still, he arrived first. That was why they feared him, because Denis Law did not wait for space. He attacked the place where fear lived. Some strikers needed 10 chances. Jimmy Greaves needed 1. That was the nightmare. A defender could play perfectly for 89 minutes. One loose touch, one misstep, 1 second, and the ball was already in the net. Former teammate Alan Mullery called Greaves the greatest goal scorer he had ever seen. He never looked rushed. never forced the finish. He simply arrived, exactly where the ball would fall. Playing for Tottenham Hotspur, Greaves scored 266 goals and became the club's all-time record goalscorer. For England national football team, he scored 44 goals in just 57 appearances. Those numbers were not luck. They were built on perfect timing. Defenders did not fear Jimmy Greaves because he dominated every minute. They feared him because he only needed one mistake, and against Jimmy Greaves, one mistake was always enough. Some footballers beat defenders. Kenny Dalglish controlled them. He did not rely on pace. He relied on decisions. The wrong decision always belonged to the defender. Follow Dalglish, and space opened behind you. Hold your position, and he turned. Watch the runner, and Kenny found the pass. There was no safe answer. Former Liverpool manager Bob Paisley called Dalglish the most talented player he had worked with, saying when Kenny shone, the whole team shone. His partnership with Ian Rush became one of football's greatest. Defenders watched Dalglish. Rush escaped. They followed Rush. Dalglish created. Either way, Liverpool stayed in control. That was Kenny Dalglish's greatest gift. He did not simply outplay defenders. He made them choose. And every choice led to the wrong answer. Some reputations arrived before the player. George Best was one of them. By the time he reached the pitch, defenders already knew it was going to be a long afternoon. He did not chase the game. The game chased him. One feint, one drop of the shoulder, one burst. And suddenly, the defender was behind him. Former Sir Alex Ferguson later reflected that gifted attacking players, like George Best, often received brutal treatment because defenders became frustrated by what they could not stop. Best accepted it and kept asking the same question, again and again. Can you stop me? Most never could. With 179 goals in 474 matches for Manchester United, he became one of football's greatest entertainers and one of its greatest match winners. But numbers never explained George Best. The real damage was done to confidence, because once he beat you, the crowd remembered, your teammates remembered, and you remembered. Long after the final whistle, that was George Best's greatest gift. He did not just defeat defenders. He made football look unfair. Years passed. Stadiums changed. Generations came and went. But football never forgot. The players who made defending feel impossible. Some arrived on muddy winter pitches. Some under Wembley lights. Some inside packed terraces, where every tackle shook the ground. Different clubs, different eras, different personalities, yet every one of them left defenders with a different memory. Frank Worthington taught them to fear the unexpected. Charlie George showed what fearless confidence could do. Stan Bowles proved chaos could never be coached. Denis Law turned the penalty area into his kingdom. Jimmy Greaves punished the smallest mistake. Kenny Dalglish defeated defenders with intelligence. And George Best reminded the football world that sometimes the greatest victory was making the impossible look effortless. The scoreboards changed. The trophies found new owners. The crowds went home. But defenders never forgot the afternoons when these men stood across from them. Because football is not remembered only by the goals that were scored. It is remembered by the opponents, who could never stop them. That is why these 7 legends still belong among football's most unforgettable names. Subscribe, because football history lives through the legends who changed it forever.